6 men killed the only man Bumpy called brother. He tied all 6 to one truck. They laughed when they said his brother was gone. 6 voices, careless. Bumpy didn't raise his tone. He just looked at the street, already deciding how silence would answer them. The news didn't come in a knock or a call. It came through the whispering corners of Harlem, sliding along the cracked sidewalks and iron gates. Bumpy heard it first from a man who didn't look him in the eye, just muttered it like dropping a match in dry grass. His brother dead. 6 of them did it. Bumpy didn't flinch. Not yet. He didn't curse, didn't slam his hand. He just stood on the stoop, feeling the weight of the words like smoke settling in the room. The word brother isn't casual. It isn't just family. In his world, it's a bond you can't betray without paying a price, one way or another. He let the silence stretch. People talk about rage, about shouting and snapping, but Bumpy didn't need that. He let the city speak for him. The streets, the corners, the old men leaning against brick walls. They all knew what that word meant coming from him. And they knew what happens when someone tests it. For a moment, he walked. Not fast, not loud. Just walking, letting Harlem notice him. Heads turned, subtle, the way pigeons scatter before the hawk lands. He passed the corner store, the barber shop, the park where children played in dusty sunlight. Everyone felt the tension, though no one saw it move. That's the thing about power. It whispers first, then decides. He stopped at the edge of the block and looked down the street where the men responsible would walk. 6 of them. 6 mistakes. And none of them had an inkling that Bumpy wasn't angry. Calm was worse than fury. It meant he had time. He had patience. And patience, in his hands, became inevitability. He touched the brim of his hat, adjusted his coat, and let his eyes sweep the streets. Harlem knew something had shifted. Something quiet, deliberate, heavy. And in that silence, in that controlled stillness, Bumpy made the first move. Not with fists, not with words, but with the certainty that the balance had been broken, and it was up to him to set it right. Bumpy moved like a shadow that owned every street it passed. Not rushing, not chasing, not making noise, but everyone felt him. Harlem had a memory. Every crack in the sidewalk, every fire escape, every worn stoop carried it. And Bumpy's presence reminded the neighborhood that memory had teeth. The corner boys stopped mid-laugh when he walked by. The old men on crates didn't shift in their seats. Even the barbers froze, shears hovering, as if the sound of steel itself had lost meaning. They didn't need to see him act. They already knew. The streets themselves answered to him. Power isn't just action, it's recognition, and Harlem recognized Bumpy Johnson. He paused outside a newsstand, glancing at the headlines he didn't need to read. Names meant nothing. The paper wasn't history. It was distraction. What mattered was the pattern of loyalty, the way the city's rhythm changed when he stepped into it. Every nod, every avoidance, every whisper was a note in the symphony of control he orchestrated without raising his voice. A man tried to step out, maybe to challenge him. Bumpy looked at him, not with anger, not with a warning, just eyes that weighed him. The man stopped, stuttered, backed away. That was all it took. Respect in Harlem wasn't demanded. It was earned quietly with every step, every calculated silence. The city itself seemed to lean closer as Bumpy walked. Windows cracked open, hands rested on door frames. People didn't follow him. They watched. They learned. They understood that some moves don't happen in a rush. Some consequences are held, measured, and delivered when the moment is right. By the time he reached the end of the block, the rumor had grown. The 6 men who took what he valued thought the streets might shield them. They thought restraint was weakness. But Harlem had already answered them. And Bumpy knew patience had already begun its work. The 6 of them were careless, cocky, walking through Harlem as if the city owed them protection. They laughed in small circles, cigarette smoke curling around their faces, thinking they had the luxury of life. They didn't know someone was already counting every step, every heartbeat. Bumpy didn't move fast. He didn't need to. His eyes traced their path, noting habits, routes, and weaknesses like a man reading a blueprint drawn in sweat and arrogance. One favored the corner store for cigarettes. Another lingered at the pool hall past midnight. Every pattern mattered. Every routine was a thread in the net he was weaving. They had underestimated calm. They had misread silence. Bumpy didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He let the city whisper warnings. A few glances from the right people, a block shifted, a car left running where it shouldn't, subtle reminders that Harlem had ears everywhere. They felt uneasy, but still laughed, because they thought this was their mistake to make. The real mistake was thinking Bumpy's restraint was indecision. Patience wasn't hesitation. It was preparation. Every move, every breath, every careful choice had already set the board. The six men didn't see it coming because it had already begun. Bumpy knew their names, their families, their debts, the ways they had crossed lines beyond this one act. Every man had someone watching, every action logged in Harlem's ledger of respect and consequence. And Bumpy would balance it, not with rage, but with inevitability. When the day finally came for him to confront them, it wouldn't matter who drew first or who flinched. Calm had already dictated the terms. And in Harlem, when calm speaks, the city listens. It happened on a street everyone knew, a corner where business was done, deals whispered, and reputations measured. The six men were bold, thinking they could mock what they hadn't yet feared. They laughed at his absence, taunted his name. The sound cut through the morning air, sharp and careless. Bumpy didn't rush to them. He didn't need to. He arrived just beyond their line of sight, his coat buttoned, hands calm at his sides. Harlem paused. Windows stayed open. Shopkeepers leaned out, sensing the shift in gravity. The city itself waited. Respect they all knew was not taken. It was confirmed, and it will be confirmed now. The laughter stopped as quickly as it began, but the tension didn't. Bumpy let silence stretch between them. He didn't speak. He didn't raise a fist. A single glance was enough. Eyes locked, the city watching. The men realized, too late, that they had crossed more than a line. They had tested the patience of a man who measured his every move like a scalpel. One of them made the mistake of stepping forward. Bumpy tilted his head, slow, deliberate, and the man froze mid-step. The street seemed to contract around him, the air thick, heavy. Mockery was gone. There was no panic, just certainty. Every man in Harlem who had ever owed or witnessed Bumpy's restraint knew what was coming. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't a scramble. It was control. And in that control, the six men felt the full weight of every disrespect they had ever thrown, every boundary ignored. Calm had arrived, and it carried consequences heavier than any gun, louder than any shout. Bumpy didn't need to speak the lesson aloud. Harlem already understood it. Bumpy didn't rush. Not a step, not a shout, not a curse. He walked toward the six men like a slow-moving tide, deliberate and inevitable. The street was emptying. Everyone knew to give space, to let the moment breathe. Silence was louder than any gun. He stopped at the center, letting the distance stretch just long enough for the six men to understand. This wasn't chance. It was choice. Calm was his weapon. Control was his authority. And they were about to see it in motion. No one spoke. Not Bumpy. Not them. The city held its breath. Every neighbor, every corner watcher, every man who had ever owed loyalty or respect knew that this moment would be remembered. The lesson wasn't in anger. It was in the deliberate measure of consequence. One by one, he made the moves that would align them, each step precise, each action quiet but irreversible. Chains, ropes, the weight of inevitability. There was no spectacle, no chaos, only the exacting patience of a man who never needed to rush. 6 lives, tied together, pulled into the reality of the choice they had made. No screams, no pleading, just the certainty of response. And in that certainty, Harlem learned that power is not measured by violence. It's measured by the control to wield it at the perfect moment and the restraint to make it last. By the time it was done, the men understood. Not just fear, but understanding. Respect had been restored. The lesson etched not in fury, but in calm, in certainty. The street was quiet afterward. Not a celebration, not a cheer. Just a stillness that carried weight. A silence heavy enough to echo in the corners of every block. Harlem had seen the consequences, measured them, and remembered. Bumpy walked away without looking back. No one followed. No one needed to. His presence lingered like smoke, a reminder that restraint could be sharper than any blade. The neighborhood absorbed the lesson, understood the unspoken rules. Respect was not given lightly, and betrayal carried its own reckoning. People whispered about the 6 men, but the story wasn't just about them. It was about Bumpy, how he moved through the city, calm, deliberate, unshaken. How he weighed lives against words, actions against principle. His authority wasn't loud, it was absolute. Power lived in his silence. In the days that followed, the city itself seemed to bend a little differently. The children playing in the alleys, the old men on the stoops, even the shopkeepers behind their counters. Everyone carried a piece of the story. Bumpy's lesson wasn't fear alone. It was clarity. It was order. It was understanding that actions, once taken, echo far beyond the moment. Harlem remembered because it always remembers. Not just the violence, but the calm before it. The precision. The inevitability. The legacy of a man who could have lost his temper, but instead measured every breath, every glance, every choice, and in doing so, became larger than any single act of vengeance. Bumpy didn't need to shout. He didn't need to justify. He only needed to be. And that was enough.